Radio check. Loud and clear.
KSL Sports and KSL Podcast present Mode Push, an American view of F1, starting now.
One stop. Here's what you get with his Odyssey.
I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted.
I enjoyed this so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody, welcome on in. It's another edition of the Mode Push Podcast, originating from Salt Lake City, Utah, United States of America. Alex Kirry, your host. Dan Jimenez, your other host. Dan, we've had a couple of weeks of having to kind of let the season settle with us a little bit, the end of the season settle a little bit. Max Verstappen is still champion, is that right?
That is correct, yep.
Okay, just checking. Did he win another race since the last race, even though?
I saw they did a promo with the AlphaTauri guys, and they went go-kart racing with the MotoGP guys. Shoot. And I saw a clip of Yuki Tsunoda passing Max
I did see that.
On a go-kart, which makes sense because Yuki weighs like 60 pounds.
Yeah, lost his touch. That's the way I look at it. Max Verstappen's lost his touch. Former
Here comes Yuki.
Two-time champion. Yeah, Yuki in the photos, people are like, is he real? Is he a toy? You're like, no, he is not he's not a drone. He's not a fake person. He is.
He's hilarious.
He's 4'10", and he has the most foul mouth of anybody on the grid, which is always fun to watch him do that. All right, well, news-wise, across the board, of course. I mean, since the whole last race happened, and since Max was still the champion, and we're moving on and moving forward, people started their testing already of their setups for 2023 in Abu Dhabi already. It was kind of cool to see Fernando already jumping into the Aston Martin and seeing what he looks like in that Aston Martin green. But there's been some other news. Of course, Mattia Binnotto from Ferrari has now stepped down.
Step down in quotation
Yes,
marks.
just like I think a lot of people who are in high-paying top positions who've been there for a long time. I mean, it's one thing because we're also like on the heels of the World Cup. I mean, we're in the middle of the World Cup right now where – oh, you didn't get to the round of 16, you're gone, dude. We have fired you, just so your fans will get off your back.
Yeah.
I feel like the Tifosi would, the Ferrari fans would be fine hearing that Mattia Binnotto had been let go. So he's gone. What does that mean for Ferrari then in the short term, long term? And are there names still that they're throwing out there for the kind of favorites to replace him?
Yeah, that is a big question. I think that the leading candidate is, and I'm going to get his name wrong, but the team principal at Alfa Romeo.
Fred Vasseur.
That, yes.
That.
Yeah, Vasseur.
The mean guy. The mean-looking guy.
The mean,
might not be mean.
Guy. Yeah.
Might not be mean, but looks mean.
But I think that that's what Ferrari needs. I think that what was Binotto's downfall was when things started going sideways, he kind of would deflect in, the press conferences about what was really the mistake or that things weren't going well. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't seem like he had this culture of accountability. And then it got worse with, the way that they would talk to Charles on the radio. And it just seemed like things are spiraling out of control. And Binnotto wasn't that guy that was like, okay, I'm going to fire this strategist. I'm going to fire this tire changer. We're going to make changes and we're going to expect, perfection out of the team. And so he just kind of had this culture of making excuses. And it sucks. He's been there 28 years.
Oh, really? Is that how long it was?
Yeah, he started in Ferrari in 1995, straight out of engineering school, and just worked his way up through Ferrari to team principal. So that's great. But I think that...
but he got to be there during the golden years. So that's the part where people go, well, if you're around for the time that we were at, our most recent success and some of our best success.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be the guy because you know what the culture was like, but it kind of tailed off there at the end and he was not the guy anymore.
Yeah. So it's going to be, I think they need to hire somebody who is going to come in, crack the whip a bit and be willing to make changes and just turn the culture of accountability around within the team. Because I think what we saw over the course of Ferrari over the year with Ferrari was a spectrum of mistakes, from strategy calls to pit lane blunders to reliability problems, and so it was just kind of across the board. So I think that that's where it's you have to look at the top and make a change there to expect the culture to turn around. So yeah, Vasseur from Alfa Romeo I think is the leading candidate. There have been rumors about Ross Brawn, but coming back, but he's I think at the FIA, and so I think there'd be a lot of question marks about the ethics of that, coming straight from the FIA making the rules to then running a team? Potentially.
I get it, but he went from Ferrari to the FIA. It's interesting, too, because it would be like having Phil Jackson come back and coach the Bulls again.
Yeah.
In a way. Where you're like, he's been gone a while. He's older. He's doing other stuff. And, he did win championships. And, he was brilliant in terms of some of the, from what I've heard. This is just one of those things that as I've gotten into F1, I've just kind of by osmosis had to learn, he's one of those key pieces to why Ferrari was so successful during that stretch in the 90s and 2000s. And so, I don't know. I don't even know how old he is. I think he's pretty old, though.
So I think he's unlikely. It's unlikely, I think. And then Gunther Steiner.
No, are they throwing his name out there?
I think people are just putting that name out there.
Just for fun.
But I think that is low probability. And there was a report saying that Ferrari's already approached Christian Horner for the position. But you're just like, for what reason would Christian leave Red Bull to go to Ferrari and pick up that hot potato?
Yeah, you're in the middle of having success right now.
Yeah.
Maybe if you would have hit him up 2 years ago, you could have had the ability to be like, hey, take us back to greatness because Red Bull, like everybody else, was getting their butts handed to them by Mercedes. So, interesting. Which job would you rather have, though? Team principal at Mercedes, team principal at Ferrari? Because, I think about the support system around you at Mercedes AMG seems like they have their crap together.
Yeah.
Ferrari is freaking Ferrari, man.
Yeah.
That would be really tempting to not have that. As ugly as bright red is, Ferrari red is not ugly.
People go crazy for a red Ferrari, and there is just something that puts, I think, just a coating of just specialness or something around Ferrari as a brand that I think that it's I think Sebastian Vettel going there, I think that it's just aspirational, as a brand.
Seb? Would it be too weird for Seb to go in there and maybe be the number 2 for a little while and then be the, I don't know if things ended well at Ferrari, but
I think if Seb was like, I don't want to travel, I don't want to do press conferences.
Yeah. Then you really hate this job.
Yeah. So I think that would be the tough part for him. So
maybe just because it was taking the part of the racing and the although with all the travel and everything that went with it, maybe the racing was the only thing that was the payoff.
I think that's the only thing he liked. Yeah, it was actually when he was in the car.
Yeah.
So we'll find out. They said that Binnotto's working through the end of the year, and they'll announce it in January. So it seems like they have 4 or 5 weeks to find a team principal. And there's just not a huge crop of, I think, eligible candidates out there.
We'll see how they figure this thing out. All right. Other news. It's official then now. The quote-unquote official announcements were made after, even though we had known they were going to be in those spots. But your Logan Sargents are going to be at Logan Sargent's going to be at Williams, and that's cool.
Cool.
Another American driver on the grid, I guess. And I just hope it doesn't burn out and not be something that it needs to be special, for people for it to move the needle. And I just don't know I don't know enough about him to be able to say definitively that he's a really talented racer, except for he's got the super points, I guess, to be there. And he's got certainly he's been living in Europe and doing the European racing thing. So, but what do you think?
He picked up a couple of wins in F2 last year, but he didn't, win the championship. He didn't light the world on fire. So
he's not getting into a fast car.
Yeah, he's not getting into a fast car. So I think it's a lot of eyes are going to be on him to see if he can perform. I just hope he's not like Latifi, where he's 2 seconds off the pace. That would just be embarrassing to see him run around for a year, getting lapped by lap 20 by the first pit stop. So I hope Williams has the long-term view on developing him and that he can keep up. But it'll be fun. It's the first full-time American in a seat, I think, since Scott Speed. Alexander Rossi, I think, ran a few races, but I don't think he did a full season.
No, I don't think so either.
So,
but Oscar Piastri also new at McLaren. Out of those guys, you feel like Piastri would have the edge. He's been racing, I feel like, a lot longer. But Nick DeVries rolled in, scored points as a replacement, And so you look and you see what these new guys are going to do. I don't know who's gonna shine brighter in their very first year in a seat in F1.
I think Piastri being in the McLaren,
a little faster outfit.
I think faster. De Vries I think has the talent, but AlphaTauri's slow. I mean, they're like Williams, but man, it'll be so interesting to see how Piastri does relative to Lando, but then also relative to Danny Ricciardo. Is he that upgrade? There was just something about Danny Rick and that McLaren chassis car that just was not a fit, and hopefully Piastri just has a more natural handle on that car and can be competitive with Lando. So that's where I'm kind of excited to watch.
So as we get kind of into the off season here, I was telling you this beforehand, and my dentist here in Salt Lake, Mark Pettit. Shout out to Mark. He was like, hey, he's like, well, he listens to the podcast. So it was very nice of him to talk about how, but he said something interesting. He goes, man, I was just glad that season was over. And I think a lot of people have a little bit of that feeling. It's like, boy, it dragged on. And when you already know who the winner is, those last 3 or 4 races kind of become bleh, and we have to find those storylines. And just from like a meat and potatoes, standpoint, there's nothing in those last races that really got you kind of going. It was funny because there was controversy still in those races, but it really didn't have any impact on anything except for just guys being either jerks or like you didn't think they were nice teammates or whatever. And he brought something else up too, and I was like, I'm gonna ask Dan this. So this question comes from Mark Pettit here in Salt Lake. He says, do you have to be a jerk to be a champion? Because he was like, I was over Max Verstappen. At the beginning, I kind of liked him, and now I'm kind of over him. And I think we get that way with people who win in general. Like if you're like if you're Michael Jordan, there's going to be a lot of people who just don't like you, especially here in Salt Lake, right?
Yeah.
But there are going to be people who don't like, winners. The Yankees, people don't like. The Lakers, people don't like. All that kind of stuff. The Cowboys, people don't, although they don't win, but people still don't like them. So he said, do you have to be a jerk to be a champion? And I thought, well, I don't know if Lewis Hamilton's a jerk, but there's definitely like a vibe of being massively egocentric. And you have to kind of be that, I think, if you're going to be an F1 driver. Being a jerk, I don't know. Lewis Hamilton plays the game because there's the part where he's in the media, and sometimes I just don't believe him, the veneer that's on that,
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting question because I thought I would go through kind of the most recent maybe the least jerk of a champion was Sebastian Vettel, but when he was winning those championships, people did not like that guy.
Yeah, I think there's like a bit of revisionist history in my head going on where it was like, oh man, Sebastian's a nice guy and Lewis isn't so bad. But then you think back to when those guys were trying to make their mark and get their first few championships, they were as cutthroat as anybody.
The stuff they say on the radio.
Yeah, so
whatever it is.
I think that in any sport, but especially in F1, like you just have to have a competitive gene that is way out on the distribution. You were just like the furthest outlier of the population of how competitive you are. And that then translates into being cutthroat, into, stepping on almost anybody in
Kobe
order to...
Kobe was not well liked.
Yeah.
Michael was not well liked.
I'm struggling to think of, oh man, Steve Young, the nice guy, wins the Super Bowl, but like how many, I can't think of too many other champions that in the moment didn't have their, that weren't rough around the edges. Yeah,
and I thought what's interesting is that are there guys on the grid who have that cutthroat nature enough? Because I think we see the way that guys like George Russell, when they, and he finally started having some success and he started getting there, and you knew he was competitive. He looked like one of the hardest workers in F1, right? He was just this guy who was always trying to get there and he was never getting there. But there's something else, and Max Verstappen, and I think to a degree, Sergio Perez has a little bit of it too, where it's like, no, I know he's the champion, but I actually gave him those championships. You can tell yourself whatever you want.
You really believe it.
And I thought, that's a really brilliant question to ask about whether or not somebody could not be a jerk but still be a world champion F1 driver, and I think the answer is no. Yeah. I think the answer is we prefer to go, that guy's a great racer and he's a great champion, and then in our minds we just prefer to say, he's probably a good guy too. But like while it's happening, Michael Schumacher was brutally cutthroat. Same thing with Ayrton Senna. Same thing with Alan Prost. If you think about all these guys across the board, they have a jerk streak that is wider than anybody.
I mean, Alonso, like even this week,
Yes.
Ocon was going off like, I did 98% of the work and Alonso did 2% of the work. I was the one doing the sim and the press and all this stuff, and he was really throwing Alonso to the bus.
And you know what?
Pretty funny, but like
and some of it might have been true.
Yeah,
But
it's
nobody
probably
looks
true.
at Alonso and goes, "Oh, what? There's not a mean gene in that guy's body." You're like, "Are you kidding? That guy is same thing."
Yeah.
The world revolves around these guys, and their world revolves around them because it's an individual sport. For as much as we try to say team, it's not. That's not the case. So you magnify the jerk, magnitude, that power, Max Verstappen to the jerk power, right? Like it goes up because these guys are individuals. You can deflect a lot of like the ego stuff a lot of times when guys have to really actually be a part of the team. And that's not really the case in F1. You don't have to be a great teammate. You could just be great yourself and move on. And if you're winning, that actually is the best thing you could do to be a quote-unquote good teammate because you're just earning points for your team.
Yeah, and I think that if you end up logging a few championships and you've kind of made it, you know that like I'm going to have a seat in F1 for, almost as long as I want, then maybe they loosen up a bit like Sebastian Vettel's loosened up. And you're maybe a little bit less cutthroat because you know that, hey, maybe if I'm not racing for a championship this season, but I'm, contributing to the team and collecting a paycheck, then you're just lowers the tension.
What happens to Danny Rick now? Where does he go from here? Because he's going to be the Red Bull reserve driver.
So it's so interesting you say that because I was understanding it as a reserve driver, but Red Bull is marketing it as their third driver, which I think is branding, right? Because
like to make him feel good?
I think it's because they want to use Danny Rick as a marketing piece. Like they're going to send him off to all these different marketing events. He's going to get in an old Red Bull car. He's going to do some donuts, and they're going to introduce him as the third, F1 driver for Red Bull. Like they've already put his face on Red Bull packaging, like for drinks, and it's like Max and Danny Rick and Sergio's not on the packaging, So I think they just saw like the media and marketing value behind Danny Rick, and
Sergio must feel massively slighted by all this.
Yeah,
he must hate every bit of this.
But like, I think Danny Rick's going to be in the simulator. He's going to do some marketing events, but I don't know how often we're going to see him at the paddock.
What does that mean? Like drive some FP1s? Like
I don't even think
they won't even do that.
I don't think. They're
going to put developmental drivers in those seats for when there's opportunities like that.
Yeah,
but like that is a dumb move by Red Bull. That is 100% has nothing, and it's risky because you're going to piss off Checo.
You're going to piss off Checo. Yeah. So I think that Red Bull likely thinks of Danny as a forcing function to keep Checo, honest, potentially.
That's Max's job. Like honestly, the number one driver is the guy you're chasing.
Right.
You don't have to be pushed.
Don't be worried about you push from behind because it's like
driver.
It's like, hey, if you don't play nice with Max, then we'll put Danny Rick in.
I mean, I guess it's to be seen, but that's a dumb move by Red Bull. That's a really dumb move. Like you are shaking something up. Or although maybe Red Bull sees the writing on the wall a little bit with Checo because he was the grumpiness we saw out of him maybe goes a little bit further than just what we saw, right? And maybe there's something else out there. Maybe these other teams, because they see Checo and they know how valuable he is in an F1 seat. And so maybe the sheen goes off of this Red Bull. I think, what is this? Contract-wise, I don't have it in front of me. I don't know how long Checo has. I think the end of next year.
End of next year, yeah. So the 2024 second seat is open. So I think that if you're Red Bull, you're kind of buying an option on Danny Rick. If Sergio performs well and plays nice and plays his role to Max, then you maybe re-up him. If not, you get to see if Danny Rick really still has it or not in the sim. And then there's just lots of talent out there they can look at because every driver wants to be able to run a Red Bull.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
I was reading Leclerc's post about Mattia Binnotto not being at Ferrari anymore. I have to pull it back up again, but it was so Charles. Like, oh, here it is. I got to read it to you. Did you see this? When
No,
he's like,
I have not.
Due to Mattia?
No.
This is for Charles Leclerc. All right?
Yeah.
This is a dramatic reading from Charles Leclerc, the Monegasque. Thank you for everything, Mattia. We spent 4 intense years together. full of great satisfaction. Also, inevitably, moments that tested us. I'm like, this is so Charles, right? Where he's like basically going, well, first of all, we spent 4 intense years together. If you describe the marriage like that or any work situation, that is an awful way to describe anything, right? Like, we spent 4 very intense years together. Because if somebody was like, how was your first marriage? You'd be like,
intense.
It was intense. And people would be like,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
Yeah.
Like, it makes it sound like it was not great. Full of great satisfaction and also, inevitably, moments that tested us. My esteem and respect for you has never been diminished. We will always have worked, and we have always worked with full dedication to achieve the same goals. Good luck for everything. There you go.
Yeah, that's very Charles.
That was not a good situation. Charles got in the ear of the chair people at Ferrari and said, "This can't happen anymore. You're paying me whatever amount of money it is to have me here. You're paying a bunch of money for this car to work, and it's not working with this guy at the head."
Yeah, it's Charles' team for sure right now. They have to keep him happy.
Oh, my goodness. You did bring something fun to the table, though, today, too. Because I was just wondering,
yes.
like, how much did Charles get paid this last year? Now, Dan has found all of the – I mean, is this like you remember the state of Utah used to have here we used to have this thing where you could look up every state employee's salary.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they kind of bagged it. But, I mean, like, it was just open public record.
And it was like you could see Kyle Whittingham's salary.
You could see the college football coaches at the state schools, how much they were making and stuff. And it's always fascinating to see what these racers are making because you have a massive disparity. But it's not unlike any other high value sport where it's like, dude, this forward makes this much money, this quarterback makes this much money, and then the long snapper makes a lot less. But across the grid, the pay amounts vary, and you haven't told me any of these, and so I'm really fascinated to see how everybody did money wise on this thing. So what did everybody make in 2022?
All right, so we'll start. We'll start number 1 and we'll go down. So total for Max Verstappen $60 million, 40 salary, 20 bonus.
Okay, you win the world championship, you get $20 extra million.
So $60 million. I mean, I can't think of an NBA player that makes $60 million a year.
No. There's people who are 50.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get Westbrook makes 47, 48.
Yeah.
Right? And he's terrible, so it's a good value for it's good value for Max Verstappen.
That's good money. Okay. Lewis Hamilton, $55 million, and that was all salary.
All salary, yes. That's crazy.
Third,
but he's a 7-time champion, so whatever.
Third,
okay.
This one's going to surprise you. Fernando Alonso, $30 million salary.
Holy cow.
No bonus.
He is, you know what? Congrats to his team because that's some great negotiating.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't on a great competitive team.
Yeah.
No, actually, Alpine was way more competitive than we thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
Especially when we heard reports that their winter testing went awful, and then they ended up kind of figuring it out. But wow, amazing. But again, multi-world champion, so maybe that's the going rate.
Yeah. Okay, number 4, Sergio at $26 million. Only 10 of that is salary, and he got 16 in bonuses.
That's pretty darn good.
So you have Sergio on a $10 million salary and Max on a $40 million salary. That's a pretty big discrepancy.
I am going to be excited about this list next year when they show
Yeah.
third driver on Red Bull, $27 million,
Yeah.
Danny Rick.
Oh, my gosh. All right, number 5, Charles Leclerc. Chuck Leclerc, $12 million of salary and $11 million of bonuses.
So he's at 33 there.
23.
Or 23 there.
Yeah.
But again, what have you done for me? Like,
Yeah, how many wins does he have under his belt?
he's definitely talented.
Yeah.
He's definitely talented, but that's like, and I always immediately go to guys who are like overpaid and haven't done it yet. He's like the Kyler Murray of racing, where you're like, okay, dude sat out and like asked for all this money, and he's the 5th highest paid driver, but he really hasn't done anything yet. Okay,
yeah. All right, tied for 6th at $17 million. You have Sebastian Vettel and Danny Ricciardo.
Danny Rick was way over his skis market value wise, but good for him. When guys get paid. By the way, all this money is monopoly money. Like this is like this money kind of doesn't mean that much to these teams. Red Bull can throw 20, and I mean they threw $30 something million at the bonuses there because the salary doesn't work into the cost cap,
right?
Which is insane because that's a huge part of this.
Yeah.
So you're talking about $100 million for these top teams when it talks about paying these guys. So, okay, all right.
Yeah. Number 8, Carlos Sainz at $15 million, 8 salary, 7 bonus.
Okay.
at number 9, Lando at $11 million. And then number 10, George Russell at $10 million.
Lando must have felt really slighted, too. Like, to be earning $6 million less than the guy who was definitely way further back. Same equipment. Now, I guess he won a race. So, in the end, he could go, yeah, but mate, who won a race? I did.
Yeah.
But everyone knows.
And Lando could have won that race, easily, too. I think they just no, we need a 1-2. Don't challenge it.
Lando signed up for, he's going to be through 2028, so.
Yeah, that's the contract out there that's man, you better hope McLaren turns it around because he's locked in for a long time.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's the top 10. I think what jumps out to me is, like you said, the Danny Rick Lando comparison, and then, George Russell at 10 relative to Lewis. I mean, Lewis has 7 world titles, but I wonder.
That's also 10 times what he was earning at Williams. No joke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He was like $1 million,
$1
$750 or something like that.
So he should be happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting how that all shakes out.
What's the lowest number then?
I'm only seeing the top 10 listed here.
My recollection.
But I gotta think Latifi's. Or no. I think I've seen.
It was like Yuki.
He's like Yuki, one of the younger guys. They're like $800K.
Yeah,
I think is the lowest salary.
I think there are guys making less than $1 million.
I think Mick had $1 million salary.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
K-Mag might have been 1.5 because they had to pull him out of semi-retirement.
Yeah, running Daytona 24-hour races.
So that's interesting. You think about what these guys are getting paid, and then think about it where it compares to. I mean, the sport generates as much revenue, TV contract wise, as some of these. It's not like the EPL. It's not like English Premier League or the NFL. I mean, you have 32 teams, and you have 15 games a week, or whatever it is, 14 games a week because of bye weeks and things like that. But that is a massive amount of content you can put on TV. But you have in the billions of views in F1 every year. And so that money that goes along with it, it's pretty interesting to see where it is compared to, the highest paid soccer players in the world are making in that $60 to $80 million a year salary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about with these guys who are top soccer players in the world. So,
did you see this today, the rumor about Cristiano Ronaldo and the Saudi team?
No.
$207 million a year.
To go be the
play
captain?
In Saudi. Yeah, in Saudi Arabia, some club team.
Oh, a club team there.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Again, you talk about monopoly money. This is also the same. Saudi Arabia, when they beat Argentina in the World Cup in the first game of the World Cup, it was massive upset.
Yeah.
Right? Comparison wise, it's hard to really compare what it would be because it's it's massive. It's a massive disparity of those teams' rankings in the FIFA rankings and just talent, etc. So winning 2-0 was an insane thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think it was 2-0. So one of the Saudi sheiks bought a Rolls Royce for every member of the roster of the Saudi team.
A Rolls Royce. I love that it's a Rolls Royce.
I know. I can't it's like, hey, does this thing turn on a dime? No.
No, this is going to be the most impractical car to own in the desert.
You can eat a sandwich in it, and you'll be super comfortable.
There's a Rolls.
It's going to be amazing. So $400,000 Rolls Royces for maybe they're the Rollses that are a little bit more lighter on their feet. I don't know if those exist.
Yeah,
but
that's so funny.
$400K for each one of the guys.
Well,
on
that reminds
roster.
me that I believe that Max Verstappen in his contract has that if he wins a championship, he gets to keep one of the cars.
Oh.
So he gets an RB 18. 18.
Yeah. Huh.
Imagine having one of those. You just park it in your garage because you won the championship.
These things go at auction now. Like if you have a Michael Schumacher Ferrari that he won a race in, it's going to go between $20 and $40 million.
Wow.
So you talk about that's a good piece to negotiate because he might not ever give it up, but what he's also holding on to is a priceless piece of art, basically.
Yeah.
Something that will only a very few people. Well, lots of Saudi sheiks maybe.
Oil barons. Just have them.
Yeah, just get one of the American football franchise owners out there, and they'll be like, "I'll take that car." I'll take it.
Jerry Jones.
Get Jerry Jones on this. We're going to put it in the middle of AT&T Stadium. You're going to love it. All right, Dan, anything else from this week? There's going to be some stuff that, of course, still rolls out. When that news happens, we're just going to have to jump on to do more of these podcasts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, it's another week in the books here. And there we go. Mode Push. Tell your friends about Mode Push. And during the offseason here, we're going to keep updating you as many times as we can. We'll drop these episodes, and you can dive in onto the off-season word on what's going on with these teams across F1. So for Dan Jimenez, I'm Alex Kirry. Thanks for sharing this with other friends. And go on, subscribe, and also review the podcast. Throw a nice little review on there if you like what you're hearing, and we'd love to get those, and that actually helps us as well. So we'll see you next time on Mode Push.